You mentioned that this summer might be a busy window, and I wanted to ask about the front line because I saw a damning statistic which said that Nunez, Jota, Diaz combined in their last 41 appearances have only scored 3 goals. So it's difficult to criticize a team that's about to win the Premier League, but I want to ask you, do you think the other options in our attack right now have maybe let Salah down as the season has progressed?
Yeah, I think there's no question really that they're not quite at his. Well, I mean that's probably a huge understatement to say they're not quite at his level. I mean we've known that, we knew that coming into this season that he was going to be top scorer. Maybe didn't predict he would have this kind of all-timer season that he's having, but it has been too heavily weighted, I think, in terms of towards Salah really for a little while now. I mean, you think of Liverpool in the peak years under Jurgen Klopp, and although Mane and Firmino weren't Salah's level then, they were still absolutely undeniably world-class players, and I don't quite see that. I think it's too heavily weighted towards kind of a support cast standard, and the closest out of anyone this season has been Gakpo, and I think it's an underrated aspect actually. Liverpool's kind of recent little dip that they've had, that he's been injured. I think he has been a big miss for them. And that shouldn't go without mention, really. But I think it is clear that, despite the fact that Liverpool have scored as many goals as they have and have done really well in attack in general this season, it is an area of the pitch that needs looking at. And I suppose the good news is that, Liverpool generally, I would say, wouldn't like a lot of squad churn and don't like to turn over too many players, because it generally leads to a bedding in period where you're not perfect the next season, and that can be a struggle. But I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think, I expect big money to come back in for Darwin Nunez from Saudi, and I expect him to go maybe there, or, if a European club can come up with the money then. But I expect him to leave regardless. All that talk about interest in Diaz, who's 2 years left on his deal, the level of production isn't quite there. Again, if that money comes in for him again, I would expect him to leave. He's not quite as nailed on as Darwin, but I think there's a good chance he goes. Chiesa cannot be happy with the role he's been given this season, and I'm sure he will want to get out to play more minutes. So all of a sudden you're losing half of your 6 options there, and you've got to replace them. So there's going to be turnover there, but I think like I say, Liverpool's signings in that area just haven't quite been at that Mane, Firmino level, and they need to get back there. And you've got this recruitment staff back in place now that signed those and will put a lot more emphasis, I think, on output more than anything else, and hopefully that physical edge as well. So, there can be churn there, but I don't think it can necessarily be a bad thing for Liverpool. I think it could be helpful, because I do think they need more people chipping in with goals than they've had this season. That output just hasn't been high enough from the players who aren't Mohamed Salah.
Yeah, that was going to be what you just said there was going to relate to my next question, because I was going to ask you if you had to say now, and obviously it's difficult to say, but if I asked you now, how many do you think will leave and how many do you think will come into that front line now as things stand now? Because Jamie Carragher said on the weekend that he expects 2 starters to come in, or rather he'd want 2 starters to come in. But if I asked you now, how many do you think will leave and how many do you think will need to come in?
I wouldn't be shocked at all. Like I said, if 3 leave, I think, pushing to 4. I look at someone like Jota, for example. Is there going to be huge interest in him with his injury record and the way he's been playing recently? I'm a little bit skeptical about that. So I think you kind of keep him around as an option, and he can be better than he has been this season. It's been a poor season for him, but I think as a goal getter off the bench, he can be worth keeping around. But if you do lose 3, then you've got to go into the market to replace them. I think the one aspect to this that is very interesting is, does Slot feel like he needs 6 options up there, or would he prefer to have 5 who are of a certain level of quality? That will be an interesting one, because, like I say, Chiesa is kind of the 6th option this season, and he has barely touched the pitch. Now, if that's going to be the case, would you prefer to have 5 options and 3 of those are Salah, 2 new guys who are basically starting level? Obviously, Gakpo can contribute, and then Jota there to kind of fill in all over the front 5, the front 3 from time to time. I just wonder whether that's the route they'll go down. But these 2, you want them to be robust, so you don't want them to be picking up injuries. You want the output there, and you want the physicality level, I think, which needs to be upped as well. I think that maybe will be the route they go down, is maybe 3 out, 2 in. But if he can true to have the same fitness record that they did this season. I don't think that's a huge issue because Chiesa's been a sixth option, but he hasn't played at all. And it also moves maybe Ungamoa a little bit closer to the first team as well, so that he is, when you get to a League Cup game, then he's getting guaranteed starts. And he has been around first team training consistently this season. So they've obviously got big plans for him. So it wouldn't shock me to see kind of 3 go, but only 2 come in. But they've got to be very, very good, of course.